Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V-Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast.
Go Blue, and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. We begin season 16 of the show with a discussion on Michigan athletics that covers a lot of ground because there is a lot going on this winter. Joining us to get the new year started is a gentleman who's very familiar to all of us, senior editor John Borton from the Wolverine Magazine. The new year has started with a bang for Dusty May and his team. In the last week, they traveled to the West Coast and took down USC and one of the nation's best defensive teams in UCLA. They are 4-0 in Big Ten action. They can be frustrating to watch at times, but they keep on winning. If Dusty May is anything like Coach B, the best basketball is coming in February and March, and it will be fun to watch. I know how you football fans are. You're already chomping at the bit for spring practice, and to look at Bryce Underwood, I think we all are. In the meantime, there is a lot of great stuff going on in hockey, basketball, wrestling, swimming, gymnastics, and they're all ranked, plenty to entertain us through these cold winter months. My guest today says the way the season ended for Sherrone Moore and his team has re-energized everything about Michigan football. Joining me with his thoughts on that and much more is John Borton from the Wolverine Magazine. So stay with us. Joining us today is senior editor John Borton from the Wolverine Magazine. Happy New Year, John, and welcome back to the show.
Well, great to be with you, Mike, and it's always fun to talk about Michigan athletics, but I'll tell you what, it's easier these days than sometimes because you've got some teams either playing very well or having finished the season on a really high note.
Oh, absolutely. A great time right now. And I think most Michigan fans are still basking in the glow of the ReliaQuest win over Alabama. Throw in that Ohio State win in the shoe, and it changed how many people viewed Sherrone's first season, didn't it, John?
There's no question about it. I mean, you had the feeling somewhere in the middle of the season when they were struggling, and it looked as if, hey, do they even make a bowl? There was some sense among at least the more cynical that are things going off the rail post Jim Harbaugh, and all of a sudden you come down and you beat Ohio State at the end of the regular season, and then you had a really, really unexpected win over Alabama with so many of your All-Americans and your standouts, especially on the defensive side of the football, off the roster. I mean, they were going to, they declared for the NFL, and they weren't going to be in this game. And you the sense I got from Michigan fans going into that was, okay, we're going to get a look at the young guys. Yes, Michigan's not going to be able to hang with the tide in this one, but we'll see the young guys, and we'll look forward to 2025. Well, the first quarter of that game certainly wiped out any thoughts like that, and all of a sudden they've got a chance to win this thing. So it was a really fun bowl game, and I think impactful for the guys on the roster now that are going to form largely that defense next year and this team. I think they came out of that with a sense that, yeah, we're going to reload some personnel wise, but we're going to go full bore right from the very start in 2025.
To put the season in perspective now, you look back in the middle of the season, a lot of people were starting to wonder. I mean, the fan base seemed to grumble at times this season about, Wink's defense. But from the second half of the Indiana game until the end of the season, until the Alabama game, this really was a championship caliber defense, wasn't it?
Well, there's no doubt about it. I mean, you look, there are comparisons to be made to a year earlier with Alabama. You had 6 sacks against Alabama in the Rose Bowl in that game that put them into the national championship game. And 5 sacks they followed up this year, and that was without your big guys in the middle, and the three defensive linemen who were among the best in the country.
Mm-hmm.
So you saw instead guys like Derek Moore stepping up and really dominating in that game, and you get the sense that, okay, this is genuinely a situation where you've got guys that have been waiting in the wings and then can get it done. And as far as the defensive coordinator's part, Wink Martindale, I do believe, it might have taken a little bit to get adjusted in some ways back to the college game, but he certainly had this team running on all cylinders, this defense, by the end of the season. To think about the second halves against Ohio State and Alabama, and really the overall game, which give up 32 points in 2 games against one team that could wind up in the national championship game, and another one that believed, for all it's worth, that it should have been in the playoff.
Well, when we look back at it now, the positive vibes in November were building both on and off the field. The Bryce Underwood story is still one I think many Michigan fans can't believe. I mean, even I have a hard time believing it happened. Did that take you by surprise, the flip of Bryce Underwood?
In the days leading up to it, in the weeks leading up to it, there was more and more of a sense, and we were getting some word behind the scenes that, hey, this could happen. But certainly it took everyone by surprise in the fortnight that led up to that final commitment. The thing of it was, I'm not so sure that it took Sherrone Moore by surprise at all, because you look back at when he was asked in mid-season about Michigan at quarterback, and he kind of smiled and said, "We're going to be fine."
Mm-hmm.
And I think there were some things in the works that nobody else knew about that we've all been treated to since then, in terms of knowledge about a fundamental shift in NIL and how equipped Michigan was going to be to really be in on players that, since, in retrospect, they were in a lot better shape than a lot of people and a lot of these critics were thinking, because all of a sudden it's, hey, we're going to fight with all the top player procurement teams in the nation, and we'll be able to do so.
Well, we also knew Michigan would need to be aggressive to fill some holes via the portal for next year's team. And I suppose the most interesting move was in bringing in Mikey Keene. Well, I should say one of the interesting moves, but, bringing Mikey Keene in from Fresno State. I mean, he might not be the wow guy that a lot of Michigan fans wanted, but he is a good addition to that quarterback room, isn't he?
Talking about a young man that's hitting 67% of his throws over the last couple of years, throwing for just a little under 3,000 yards per game or per season. Think about if Michigan had those sorts of numbers this year, and what that could have meant, what the games that they could have gotten over the top. All of this that we were talking about that Michigan achieved at the end of the season really came still largely without much of an offense.
Mm-hmm.
And you saw in the bowl game, you saw a Jordan Marshall step up and be able to give a sense that there's some young guys coming on. But at the quarterback spot, there was still this sense that something dramatic has to happen, and something dramatic certainly has happened for 2025. I think Mikey Keene is really the perfect sort of gap quarterback. He can come in and start at the beginning of next year, or at least battle to do so, put you in a situation where Bryce Underwood doesn't have to have every bit of the pressure on him to step out there from the first game of his true freshman season and be the guy. Now, I'm sure he intends to be the guy, and that's good. That's the way you want him to think. But I think what they have done is assembled a quarterback room now where you take that pressure off, and yet you have the super high upside in the freshmen coming in.
Well, the other surprising pickup was Justice Haynes from Alabama. All of a sudden, the running back room is looking much better too, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's like, oh, what will they ever do without Mullings and without Blake Corum from a year ago and Donovan Edwards? And all of a sudden, you've got a 1-2 combo in Haynes and Marshall that looks pretty darn good, because certainly Justice Haynes averaging, I believe it was 5.7 yards a carry this past year, and being a top back for one of the best programs in the country, and certainly what Marshall showed in the bowl game, that's got a lot of people excited. You still have Benjamin Hall coming back, and he got some run in the bowl game as well. I think the offensive line is going to be improved because of some of the things that they're doing and building, and you're going to be in much better shape putting points on the board, as well as having a very staunch defense.
There were some other very good depth pieces added via the portal, but we still hear, maybe another receiver, maybe even another D lineman or offensive lineman would be nice. Do you think we'll see some more additions when the spring portal opens?
I do. I think there are some guys that certainly could be in the mix, and the positions that you're talking about are very much in focus. And we hear the names and we see, okay, what's it going to be? And we're hearing new names all the time that could become Wolverines in the very near future. And so I just think that the other shoe has yet to drop. They established themselves quite well in the early going, getting double-digit portal sign-ins. But I do think that you're going to hear about strong addition in both offensive line and wide receiver before all said and done.
The thing we have to keep in mind these days in our current environment is the door swings both ways when that portal opens in the spring. We could have some of our guys jump in the portal that we don't know about yet. That's just the reality, isn't it?
Yeah, there's no doubt. There's that could still happen, but certainly I think Michigan has done a pretty good job so far of having guys that could have gone decide that either they're sticking around or they're very seriously considering it. I mean, the Max Bredesen being the very latest that says, I'm in for 2025. And you think about what that means for guys like those backs that we mentioned. I mean, here's a guy that is a road grader at the H-back, the fullback, however you want to consider him, but just tough as nails, a great team guy, and makes a difference on those goal line plays where you have to bury an opponent and get the ball over the line. So those types of guys, the Derek Moores, make a big difference, and Michigan's done a job so far in getting them to come back for one more year at least.
Well, with the addition of Bryce Underwood, the recruiting class of 2025 took a really nice jump. And with everything going on around the program, Sherrone in his first year, he and his staff really deserve credit, because this ended up being a really good recruiting class, didn't it?
There's no question. I mean, you're talking about a cusp of the top 5, definitely top 10 sort of group, and anytime you land the number 1 recruit in the nation at the most important spot on the field, it's a big deal, and it certainly got Michigan fans excited. It got other recruits excited. I mean, there was a follow-up effect of Bryce Underwood coming to Michigan, and there will be even in the next year. Okay, hey, yeah, I want to come to Michigan to play with that guy and with these guys, the way they're building this thing up. So absolutely a huge momentum shift in perception by Sherrone Moore. Now, Sherrone Moore, he never was in a position where he showed feeling any of the heat during the season. No, he wanted. No, he didn't like the losing in the middle. He wanted to win more games, but he came across as always feeling like, we're going to get this done. We know what we're doing. We know how we're going to go about it. And by the end of the season, everyone believed, and everyone might include Ohio State and Alabama.
Well, the way we finished the year on the recruiting trail and in the portal, I think it surprised a lot of folks, not only Michigan fans, but around college football. And Sherrone and his staff, again, deserve a ton of credit. But I've got to think GM Sean McGee, who is the architect behind the scenes with a lot of this, we don't talk about him a lot, but he is one sharp and very important guy, isn't he, John?
There's no question about it. He's done it for NFL rosters, and he's very adept in everything that he does in terms of how you use your resources and how you can build a team. And then it's become where that has to be a major part of what you're doing. And to be nimble enough to be able to make deals and divvy up intelligently and do all those things. We had a long interview with Sean and on our site recently. He was very, very insightful in terms of what the priorities are and how you go about making these decisions. He comes across as someone who absolutely knows just what he's doing when it comes to these types of things. One of the folks on our message board, he said when Sean McGee is noted to be involved in a certain recruitment, he says, I know it's serious.
Well, another change after the season was moving on from Kirk Campbell at OC and bringing in Chip Lindsey from North Carolina. And I know time will tell, but he sure looks like a very substantial upgrade there, doesn't he, John?
Yeah, I believe so. He's certainly run some good offenses. He's been with some good people. He's got a former quarterback that is now having success in the NFL that swears by him, said took his greatest jump when he was playing for Chip. And I just think that, yes, it has to play out on the field, but given the combination that this is a guy who is proven, that other players that have played for him swear by, and he's coming in knowing what Sherrone Moore wants to accomplish on offense. It's like you've got the grand designer, who is Sherrone Moore, who wants to lay out the plan, but you've got a guy that is very skilled at being able to run different types of offenses, go by the blueprint, and at the same time put his own stamp on it.
Well, Sherrone said he didn't expect any other changes on his offensive staff, something to that effect. And I didn't hear him say anything about the defensive side, though. Would you be surprised at this point if there were not some more changes?
The word that we were getting is they are largely set now. You can always have something come up still fairly early in the off season for teams that aren't in the playoff. But I just think, you would hear even the criticism that some of the defensive staff was getting. You definitely weren't hearing that by the end. And all of a sudden it's like the linebackers and the secondary. We're very much on board with what they're doing. You keep an eye out because some things could still change. But the last word that we had got was that once the OC's in place, this team is pretty well set to go into next year.
Well, now we have a short break from football, just a few weeks until spring practice gets underway, actually, and we can shift our attention towards some other winter sports like basketball, men and women. The Big Ten season is young for the guys, but man, does it sure look like Dusty May has put together a surprisingly good team, or what, John?
Well, it's a real shocker in some ways. Not that Dusty May is going to build a good program. I think people knew that when the first minute he foot on campus or even before, because you'd seen him take a Florida Atlantic team to the Final Four and that sort of thing. Dusty May is a very solid basketball coach, and he definitely hit the ground running here. But to win in the fashion that they have, I mean, this could be an undefeated team. Let's face it. They're, 15 games in, and they've lost 3 games by a combined total of 5 points. There have been ups and downs in terms of losing some leads and the turnovers and things like that you're still concerned about. But those are all things that for this team to reach its ceiling, it still has room to grow. Think about this. Any Big Ten team that wins 3 road games in even a Big Ten season, that's going to take you a long way towards getting you where you want to go in this league. I mean, that's pretty solid for some. There's some that won't win 3 games on the road in the Big Ten, and yet Michigan did it in the very first 3 games. To go to Wisconsin, to go to USC, to go to UCLA, and win those 3 games has it off to an absolutely fantastic start, 4-0 in the Big Ten. And you've gone from, okay, Dusty May has really put together, he's brought some good guys in here. They may finish in the top half of the Big Ten, and that gets you what? That gets you probably into the NCAA tournament. That kind of talk faded away in these last few weeks, and all of a sudden now it's, yes, Michigan basketball is a real contender for the Big Ten championship.
Well, it's going to be a fun winter watching Dusty May get that team ramped up for February, and then, of course, March. And then over on the ladies' side, Kim Barnes-Rico's team is 10-5 overall. Now they've stubbed their toes in the last 3 games, Big Ten games, and lost. Purdue and Washington coming up. Young team, but if they can turn things around, they can still have a darn good season, can't they, John?
Yeah, no doubt about it. As you mentioned, a bit of a stumble of late, but you look at the teams that they're playing. They lost 3 straight, but number 4, USC, number 1, UCLA, number 9, Ohio State. These are very, very good teams that they're facing. They've got to get this thing ironed out a little bit. They do have some fantastic freshmen that we have seen come up big in games, and some veteran players as well that are very solid. So, yeah, good. This is a good team, and I would expect it to be battling for that NCAA spot once again. But it doesn't get any easier. And Michigan, I guess the good and bad for Michigan women's basketball is they are not going to sneak up on anybody anymore because of what they've done in the recent past in terms of success, and B, the fact that they've really done some high-level recruiting and have some names that people are very familiar with.
Well, hockey is at 12-7-1 overall right now, 6-4 in Big Ten action. They have a pair in South Bend this weekend against Notre Dame. A lot of young talent on this team, John, but they've been kind of a roller coaster team to watch so far, haven't they?
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, of late, it has been like we were talking about with women's basketball. This is a team that has had some real ups and downs, and not all that long ago, early December, went through 3 games where they were shut out 3 games in a row. 2 against Minnesota, 1 against Wisconsin. They've bounced back of late to take 2 out of the last 3, a couple in overtime, 1 against the Badgers and 1 against the Buckeyes. But, yeah, a team that is learning and growing, and I would say is going to be competitive all the way through, but they have to take some strides here through the middle part of January and into February, because as we know, just like with basketball, come spring is when you're really judged on what kind of a team that you roll out there. It's so much based on the tournament and what's going to happen.
So much to watch right now in the Michigan athletic scene. Wrestling is off to a 3-0 start. They have Maryland tonight. We're taping on Friday morning. They are trying to follow up a very successful 2024 season with a lot of new faces. I think 7 of last year's guys are gone, but expectations, they remain high, don't they, John?
Absolutely. And, expectations are different in Big Ten when it comes to wrestling, because there are so many premier programs. It's like if you're in the top half of that league, you are certainly one of the top 10 teams in the country. And so absolutely, for Michigan wrestling, it's all about how they're able to stand up against some of these great programs within the Big Ten, and that gets them ready for the NCAAs and first off, obviously the Big Ten championships, but then the NCAAs that are going to be in Philadelphia this spring, and that's always a very intense time for Michigan, both individually and as a team.
Well, as you can tell, and we said it a couple of times, very busy time of the year on the Michigan athletics scene with really a lot to enjoy. But a final question before we let you get away, John. We didn't touch on this topic earlier, but it's been a fact. We haven't heard much regarding the NOA surrounding the sign-stealing saga. Do you think we will have some closure on that this winter or soon?
It has been a area where everything has been so tight-lipped, and we know how the NCAA works, and it is not quickly. We heard that it may move a little more quickly in this matter, but honestly, I believe that with the way things have changed for Michigan football, quite honestly, it felt like the NCAA's big target was, quite frankly, Jim Harbaugh.
Mm-hmm.
He's no longer here. Any emails and such that involved Sherrone Moore, he has already expressed that, hey, make them public. I don't care. I mean, he clearly feels there's nothing to worry about there. So, I don't know that we necessarily hear anything in the not too distant future. We'll see, but I've long ago given up trying to predict what the NCAA is going to do in these matters.
Yeah. Well, we'll just wait and see. As you said, it could be a month, it could be 10 months, the way the NCAA moves. But in the meantime, there is an awful lot to pay attention to and enjoy on the Michigan athletics scene. And here with us today has been senior editor John Borton from the Wolverine Magazine. Again, John, always great to have you on the show with us. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to another visit soon.
Thanks, Mike. It's going to be a great year ahead, and even what we certainly have in the spring coming up for Michigan athletics.
On Quick Hits today, 24th ranked men's basketball, 12-3 overall, 4-0 in the Big Ten, returns to Ann Arbor for its first home game of the new year, hosting Washington at Chrysler Center on Sunday afternoon. Tip-off is scheduled for 2 p.m., and the game will be broadcast on Big Ten Network. 25th ranked women's basketball, 10-5 overall, 1-3 in the Big Ten, will hit the road this weekend, heading to Purdue to face the Boilermakers on Saturday afternoon at 2 p.m. Number 9 ranked hockey, 12-7-1 overall, 6-4 in the Big Ten, heads to South Bend to take on Notre Dame in a weekend set. The teams face off on Friday at 7 p.m. and Saturday at 6 p.m., with both games being streamed live on Peacock. Number 10 ranked wrestling, 3-0 so far, will return home to kick off the Big Ten portion of its schedule when it hosts Maryland at 6 p.m. Friday at Chrysler Center. Number 13 ranked men's swimming and diving, 2-0 overall, 1-0 in the Big Ten, will open the new year with a trip to Bloomington to take on number 2 Indiana on Friday at 11 a.m. Number 7 ranked women's swimming and diving, 3-0 overall, 1-0 in the Big Ten, will also be in Bloomington joining the men to take on number 6 Indiana on Friday. Number 2 ranked men's gymnastics will open its season on Saturday at 1 p.m. against Greenville and Simpson at Cliff Keen Arena. The meet will be streamed live on Big Ten Plus. Admission is free for all 2025 regular season home meets. Number 13 ranked women's gymnastics, 0-1 so far, will travel to Oklahoma City for the Sprouts Farmer Market Collegiate Quad on Friday at 9 p.m. The Wolverines will go up against number 14 Arizona, Clemson, and number 8 North Carolina State, with the meet being broadcast live on the ACC network. That does it for now. We'll be back next week with more of the latest news on the Michigan athletic scene, so make sure you join us. Have a great Wolverine weekend, everyone. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Until we meet again, take care, and as always, go blue.
Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!